I'd like to begin by inviting you to reflect on a moment in your career when you felt stuck. Perhaps this is due to lack of tools, diminished confidence, or even the absence of a supportive leader. If this resonates with you, you are not alone. I've been there many times myself. I was once led to believe that career success is simply a matter of following a linear path. Climb the ladder, they say, collect those certifications, gain the right education, accumulate years of experience in the field. As time has passed, I've worked 18 years in the professional services industry, and I've been surviving the corporate landscape. I found that the concept of the ladder to be deeply flawed. In my experience, none of my employees have followed a perfectly straight trajectory into success. In my own path, it has resembled more of what I would like to call a corporate rock wall. The journey has been very unpredictable, uneven, and oftentimes demanding. I've had lateral moves, resets, and needed resilience to keep going. And this framework was shaped the way that I think about performance and leadership. And it's why this topic holds a deep personal and professional significance to me. It has allowed me to bridge both my academic focus and the organizational leadership with my passion for psychology. Throughout my studies at NKU, I've developed a keen interest in how human behavior influences performance. I'm particularly invested in individuals who struggle to meet expectations and their journey up the wall. I've seen firsthand how the traditional top performer narrative can overlook and even alienate those who I have supported. I believe that building high performers isn't about climbing a ladder, but more about equipping people to scale a corporate rock wall where resilience, adaptability, and the right support makes all the difference. So let's start with my why. It's very simple. We need to stop focusing on our top performers and start supporting the growth of an entire team. Real impact comes from building inclusive, resilient teams, not just rewarding those who are already accelerating on the path. So today, here's what we're going to cover. So we're going to talk about the corporate ladder versus the corporate rock wall and the framework around it. We're going to talk about how modern career growth is very messy, nonlinear, and unique to each person. We're going to talk about psychological safety and building confidence in your teams. When teams feel safe and confident, those go hand in hand and it improves performance overall. And then we're going to talk about positive reinforcement versus correction or punishment. A quick look at encouraging how work drives better results through focusing on what is going well versus what isn't going well. And then lastly, we're going to talk about both emotional intelligence and corporate growth and how those go hand in hand, and how when you have self-awareness and empathy as leaders, we can power our underperformers, and then that ends up building a culture for growth. All right, so to set the stage for my research and my concepts, let's start with understanding the traditional corporate ladder. As you can see from the model here, traditional corporate model says that success is all about climbing upwards in a lateral trajectory, one rung at a time. It's very linear, it's structured, and it's based on the belief that if we follow these steps, check off these boxes, stay the course, we'll eventually reach the top. And the top could be defined as promotions, career growth, financial compensation. But how many people do you know have actually followed a linear path to the top? Almost none. In reality, career progression doesn't follow a straight line. Most of us are scaling rock walls. We sometimes have to move sideways, we pause to regroup, sometimes we fall backwards a little bit. Growth is rarely predictable and it needs to be adaptable. And sometimes you have to be creative, and each path is unique for each person. Instead of climbing up this ladder, I'd like to consider finding the next best foothold on a rock wall that supports our strengths, our timing, and our support. So Simon Sinek had a great book called Start With Why. And in that book, he talks about what people are inspired by are not by what we do or how we do it, but the why behind what we're doing. This begins with recognizing that leaders are responsible for supporting individuals at all levels, and everyone deserves a chance to find their way up that corporate rock wall. Today, we're going to explore how shifting from a ladder mindset to a rock wall framework can reshape how we as leaders lead, develop, and motivate our teams. So it's going to be an opportunity for us to make space for every kind of climber at all experience levels and finding ways for them to succeed. All right, so let's talk about what it actually feels like to be on the rock wall. You may not be as an experienced climber, so imagine you're climbing and suddenly you start to lose your grip. What keeps you from falling completely off that wall? Well, of course, you have your safety harness, your safety net. That's the rope, and usually there's someone below you spotting you to keep you from falling off. Well, in leadership, that safety net is called psychological safety. It's the trust we build within our teams so that we know if we stumble, my leader is there not to punish me, but to support me and help me find another way up. So if that path wasn't working, we pivot. As leaders, as leadership, we are going to build that hard hat of confidence. We're going to supply a rope of trust, and we're going to continue that open communication. So according to Hershey and Blanchard in 2012, confidence building is essential for employee growth. It's especially the case for those who aren't always tied to that top performance. And Brene Brown in 2018 talks about in Dare to Lead that leaders who start conversations with vulnerability and empathy create space for people to have the ability to try, to fail, and to try again. The best leaders don't just cheer and coach from the top of the wall, but they're on the ground. They're guiding, they're encouraging, and they're offering new routes to make sure climbers are equipped with the right tools. This is achieved through trust building in your one-on-one connections, frequent feedback loops, and on-the-job training. This is how we help people keep climbing up the wall. Now remember, when you're on the ground, you have a much better picture of the entire corporate landscape, and when you lead from the top, you're only seeing what's right below you. Okay, so imagine you have an employee who's scrambling up this corporate rock wall, and suddenly they start to slip. They have a missed foothold, or they're simply running out of steam. I've been there too. I've misstepped, I've slid backwards a few feet, and in the moment, the last thing I needed was my boss shouting at me, "You suck." That kind of reaction is going to be draining and demotivating, and when my team member loses their footing, I do not scold them for that stumble. Instead, I look at this as a teachable moment. So we're going to call out what's working well, we're going to offer a new fresh angle, and we're going to spot an area for them to reset. Take for example, I had an employee who was constantly missing deadlines. Rather than yelling, I walked them through why due dates were important, how missed handoffs were impacting a project, and by digging into the time management tactics and providing that skill set and practicing it together, I noticed a shift in the delivery, and they started submitting things above the due date. These mistakes were teachable moments, and when I handled it well instead of yelling at them, I turned that slip up into a solid grip to the next climb on the rock wall. Research in the field of organizational leadership continues to show that behavior-focused feedback should be timely. Praise has proven to be far more effective than correction, yelling, especially for those who are disengaged or already feeling discouraged. In practice, I've seen it play out time and time again. When people feel supported, they are more willing to engage, and even if the progress is slow. And that's Simon and Brand research from 2022. Furthermore, Knoll in 2021 emphasizes that results-driven organizations whose sole focus is on numbers lose the key motivating factor for performance. Efforts extend throughout the journey, and providing feedback on minor achievements, every piece deserves recognition. Positive reinforcement serves as that critical component that sustains engagement and persistence among our followers. Now, Positive reinforcement is a starting point, and for people to hit their stride, it's really important to make sure you're scanning that emotional terrain. When do my employees need a boost? You need to recognize, do you need to give them space so that they can find the next footing on their own? In these situations, emotional intelligence is indispensable of a skill set. So emotional intelligence helps us recognize when someone is either holding on too tightly to the wall, or they're in a fear state and they're hesitating to move to that next handhold. It could be because of lack of confidence. As leaders responsible for holding that rope, we are required not only to provide strength, but also awareness and perspective. When motivating our direct reports, it's important to address their needs beyond just the tools and the feedback to do their job. Hubbard 2024 warns us that fear-based leadership can shake the entire rock wall, and it erodes trust and paralyzes growth in that individual. In contrast, emotionally intelligent leaders who provide steady support, they recognize when to push, when to pause, how to motivate not just the top climbers, but also climbers on every section of the wall. Daniel Pink had this great book in 2009 called Drive, and it highlighted that individuals are driven not by fear of failure during a challenging ascent of a rock wall, but by autonomy, mastery, and purpose. By leading with empathy, we can enable our teams to discover the intrinsic motivation and their personal drive. Perfect example of this is if you simply offer a monetary reward, let's say $100, this may not be sufficient in driving peak performance in an organization. When employees are motivated to achieve mastery in their field, they aspire to advance. It can lead to significantly greater success and unlock all kinds of new opportunities. Emotional intelligence isn't just a nice to have leadership skill, it's key to finding your team's hidden potential. All right, so we've talked a lot about this rock wall, and throughout my career, I've actually fallen completely off the corporate rock wall 3 times. The first time was when I left nursing and stepped into the IT field for the first time. Second time was I was at a company who acquired another company, and they laid off 20% of their employees, and I was replaced with offshore resources. And then most recently, I worked for a startup that lost its funding, and I had to lay off my entire team. The biggest thing that I learned from these experiences was to keep getting back on the wall. Each time gave me a new perspective, and now that I'm a new leader at Optimizely, I'm leading others again, and one of the things I learned is standing up at the top of the rock wall saying nice job from the top isn't going to motivate my team. I need to be that voice from below. So feedback isn't just something that I wait to give. I take time and provide steady support to my direct reports to help them find that next step. So whether they're climbing up, shifting sideways, or just taking a break, it's my job to help them see the best path forward and remind them they're not doing this journey alone. Jung et al. In 2010, his research agrees that real-time performance feedback keeps motivation high, especially when the terrain gets tricky. Similarly, Mao et al. 2017 reminds us that only spotlighting the top climbers can leave others feeling overlooked or even disengaged. This results in many people quitting the rock wall altogether. So clarity matters. When every climber sees the next reachable grip, they're more likely to keep going. As leaders, it's our role to make sure that we're not setting the destination, but we're coaching from below, we're calling out dangers and encouraging rest and continuing the journey with our peers. All right, so now expanding on that rock wall framework and seeing how it applies to organizations, I want you to imagine every individual in an organization that's on the rock wall at all different levels. You'll see that it's not a singular ladder, but the landscape is unique, and each path for each person can grow in different directions. To build a culture of growth, we need to empower people to move in ways that suit their strengths, even if the paths aren't linear. This shift requires creativity, problem solving, and systems level thinking. Hershey et al. In 2012 reminds us that leadership is situational. Growth doesn't always mean up. Lateral moves, shadowing, cross-training, cross-functional learning, all of that builds depth and resilience within our teammates. While outcomes matter, we must also recognize progress. So Todd Henry did a great book called Herding Tigers in 2018, and he stressed that the creative mind or the creative employee feels safe when they are taking risks. You can't just reward results because that can kill innovation. Instead, highlight small wins, run innovation pilots, or even take times for lessons learned. Finally, leaders create space for the unconventional paths. It's time to challenge traditional structures, redefine success, and open up new paths for our employees. So, if we want to build a culture where everyone can grow, we need to stop pushing low performers up a ladder that they're not ready to climb, and instead help them find their own path and their own footholds on the corporate rock wall. This begins by shifting our mindset. Instead of trying to fix performance gaps, we need to empower our people to equip themselves with the right tools, confidence, and frequent coaching. Psychological safety is a key driver to success in organizations, and Brené Brown in 2018 reminds us that people take risks and grow when they feel safe, seen, heard, and supported. Emotional intelligence isn't optional, it's foundational, and feedback is not a verdict. It is a navigation tool. Simon Sinek in 2009 advises us to start with the why. Feedback should align to both the company and personal values, individual purpose, and it shouldn't just highlight mistakes. Leaders are here to provide a path, and it's not just a singular one, but serve as guides to help navigate that difficult terrain. They support progress and address structural issues with their employees through accountability. So as I wrap up here today, I want to leave you with a few takeaways. We've talked about performance, we've talked about potential, but more importantly, we've redefined how we think about growth. Our organizations don't need leaders who simply help navigate that rigid ladder. They need leaders who understand the complexity of the corporate rock wall framework. Leaders create space for people who grow in all directions at their own pace in their own way. Remember, success is about empowerment over correction, progress over perfection, and curiosity over control. If you remember anything today, remember this. The rock wall isn't just a metaphor, and it's not just a framework. If we want people to be motivated, we need leaders who are willing to reimagine the wall itself. One hold, one grip, one opportunity at a time. When we focus on the growth instead of just performance, we don't just build strong employees, we build stronger teams, and stronger teams build more resilient organizations. Thank you.